Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our May Cybersecurity Meetup, and we are very happy to have you with us. Really interesting topic today. With me is Jeff Dix, who's our Chief Security Officer. Jeff, thanks for playing along today.
Good morning, Louis. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Good Memorial Day, I assume. We just had that. So, yeah.
Nice to have that extra day. Definitely.
Well, yeah, help me prepare for this event. So we're going to talk about Copilot today, Microsoft Copilot, and there's a couple of different versions of it. We'll kind of define what that is. We'll get into some of the details of how you can deploy Microsoft Copilot, but more importantly, we're going to have a conversation around some of the cybersecurity concerns that people may have around using Copilot and some of the things that you should be aware of and steps you need to do to protect yourself and protect your organization. And then finally, if we have time, we'll do a couple of demos on Copilot for Microsoft 365, see how it works in Microsoft Teams as well as in Microsoft Word. So with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the two flavors of Copilot that we hear a lot about. The Microsoft Copilot is built on OpenAI's ChatGPT generative AI engine. And originally Microsoft made Copilot available, and it's still available for free to the public. And this is the version that most people think about. This is kind of like ChatGPT version of Copilot, and it's available at bing.com. You can download it as an app for your smartphone or tablet, and it's even available on Microsoft Edge as a button if you use that browser. So it's pretty much everywhere. It lets you do some fun things, including creating some images recently that's been upgraded with ChatGPT version 4 Turbo or Omni is the other word that they use. It's an interim release that OpenAI released earlier this month before the expected release of ChatGPT 5 sometime later this year. But since the release of the original Copilot, Microsoft has released a version of it that integrates into your Microsoft 365 suite. And this is the suite that includes Outlook, all the desktop apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and it also includes Copilot in Teams, and it has a really cool tool called Copilot Studio that lets you use a no-code, that is, you don't have to know how to do programming, a no-code way of creating, like, think of them as chatbots that work within Teams to let your organization get to data faster. If we have time, we'll show you a little bit of that. But those are the two versions of Copilot. Copilot, the limited version is, like I said, free. There is a charge for Copilot for Microsoft 365, and you also need to have the correct version of Microsoft 365. So you need to have a certain kind of licensing, although it's pretty broad, so it's not very limiting at all. So Microsoft has decided to help people who are interested in starting and deploying Copilot for Microsoft 365. And they've come up with this phased approach to, how you get to deploy Microsoft or Copilot for M365. Phase 1, readiness. Phase 2, adoption. And then phase 3, measurement. And phase 3 is really important because, as we'll show you in a bit, Copilot is not inexpensive. So you want to make sure that if you do make the investment, that your team is making use of it. And I can tell you just from personal experience, it doesn't take very long before you start using it and it becomes a real productivity enhancer. But still, you want to measure that and make sure that you are encouraging your team to make use as much as possible of M365. So Jeff, I want to pause here and talk about some of the security implications, especially during phase 1, the readiness. What do you see as some of those issues that people really need to be aware of?
Probably the biggest challenge that organizations are going to have in implementing Copilot is the data, what we call data governance. A lot of organizations haven't paid a lot of close attention to that. Most organizations, if they don't want to spend the time that it takes to manage permissions and who has access to files and who has access to certain directories, so they're more broad and more open with permissions that they give their users to those files. And that could be a real problem with Copilot, because one of the things that Copilot is an advanced search engine, along with a large language model engine that it runs under. In that, a user could quickly do a search for example, like HR. If HR doesn't have their files protected properly, any user that would have access to the HR directory could potentially design a prompt to ask, for a list of all the salaries of all the employees in the company, and Copilot would return that immediately as long as it had access to that data. So a real close look at an organization's file structure and the user permissions to access those files and those directories is going to be a real prerequisite before you implement Copilot. And depending upon how much data you have, if you have gigabytes and gigabytes, maybe even terabytes of data, that process of that review, that permissions review that's really required, could take quite some time and be burdensome. But it is a requirement. You definitely don't want to open up yourself for a lot of cyber security issues if you haven't taken the proper steps, the implementation steps that Microsoft has laid out for everybody. But data governance is probably the most important and will be the most challenging aspect of a Copilot implementation in my view.
Yeah, and you point out that in a way, Copilot, working within all the applications, is kind of a search engine on steroids. It's able to access any file, any image, anything that's stored within your Microsoft tenant's SharePoint or Microsoft Graph backend, which is where Microsoft, basically what all the applications are built on. And that means that even if you're using OneDrive and you're storing information that way, if you don't properly protect that information, if you don't secure it with the right permissions, then people who really aren't authorized to have access to it may get access to it, and they won't have to do anything more than just ask Copilot to go find it.
Yes, exactly. Used to be threat actors that had to work a little bit to get that information and find out where it is. But with Copilot, all you have to do is design a prompt, either a speaking prompt or a typewritten prompt, and it'll return that information very quickly. The other thing that is probably good to point out is the Copilot for M365. If you want it to be able to search in your company shares, that information really needs to be in SharePoint or in OneDrive, as you mentioned. A lot of organizations still have their file shares either on local servers or in some other cloud-based storage system. And for you to get the most out of Copilot for M365, those company files and folders really need to be moved into SharePoint. And we've done a lot of projects for our clients to get that done. So something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the journey. Microsoft, like I said, has tried to make it easier for organizations to implement Copilot for Microsoft 365. And one of the things that they've put together for partners like us is a way for us to help our clients assess where they're at in their preparation for deploying Copilot for M365. This assessment tool is available through partners for clients. It's something that we offer and really the scope and time it takes to go through the assessment depends on the size of the organization, the number of users and things like that. In our case, it's the engagement starts at $2,500, where for most small organizations that will be sufficient. If you're a really large organization, it's going to take a little longer. Then we'll have to come up with a more detailed proposal for you. But you can kind of assume that once you get through this process, what you end up with is a document, a deliverable that will provide step by step the things that you need to do in order to not only prepare to deploy Copilot, but actually deploy it and then start monitoring its usage within your organization. So the optimization assessment is something that we highly recommend if you're interested in deploying Copilot for your M365 environment, that you go through this optimization assessment first to get ready for it. And then the next step in the process is to find a small group of people that all work together. That's the key point. Is when you pilot, we don't recommend that you immediately deploy Copilot across your entire organization for a number of reasons. But then instead you choose a department perhaps, or a couple of departments that can use Copilot together and learn together. I've been using it now for a few months, and in a way, I think of it as like somebody sends you an intern and says, "Here's your assistant. Figure out what to do with them." And you kind of scratch your head and have to ask yourself, well, what can this person do? What are their skill sets? What are their capabilities? And that's what happens with Copilot. You start asking it to do little things, and pretty soon you start to get comfortable and start to ask it to do more and more and more. And you learn what its limitations are, because it does have limitations. It's not, it's not a sentient being by any stretch of the imagination. It's just something that is there to help you do your work. But you think of it as an intern, and the more you use it, the better you are at using it. So having a small group of people work together to implement it is helpful, because they can share those experiences and share the things that they've learned, and work together to get it to the point where then you can start deploying it across the entire organization. But by then, you've learned, how it works. You've identified any weaknesses in the way that your data is stored, and any gotchas in terms of the permission structure and data governance that you need to be mindful of. And then you can deploy it across your environment. So when you do that, what you need to be aware of is that Copilot runs $30 per person per month when paid in advance. So you have to pay for the whole thing in advance, which, $360 for a tool sounds like a lot of money, but when you consider how much time it can potentially save you, especially if you're a professional, let's say you're a lawyer or a CEO of a company, and every minute that you have is precious. If it can save you a couple of hours a week in being able to do your work, it more than pays for itself in the first couple of months. So it's expensive in one regard, but not so much when you think about it in kind of the macro way. And the other thing that's interesting too about the pricing is that if you are a large organization, you want to deploy this, we'll make sure that your underlying M365 licensing is set up so that it can be used and can be added to your tenant. And we can even work out, if you're a really large organization, a month-to-month payment system with some of our distributors. So don't let that be a roadblock to testing and using M365 or Copilot for M365. All right, so I am going to stop sharing this PowerPoint. And then I want to go to a couple of demonstrations of the power of Copilot. By the way, I'm remiss in reminding you folks that if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button to ask those. We'll be happy to answer them as we go along here. But let me see if I can call up my first demo. All right, so actually, I'm going to get out of this again because I forgot to do one thing. I apologize. So in preparation for our meeting, oh, actually, I can't do sound. Well, I guess we will skip the sound piece and we'll just kind of go with the flow, as it were. So yesterday, in preparation for our meeting, Jeff and I recorded a short session to kind of demonstrate several of the features of Copilot within Microsoft Teams, which is a tool that we use actively within our organization. So here's an example of, since you can't hear the sound, you'll probably just see us talking. I won't go through the whole thing. You see it's about a minute and a half long. But what happened after we got done with our meeting is Copilot went in and created a meeting summary of the meeting. And then the action items that came out of that meeting, it identified for each of us things that we said. We didn't tell it to create these tasks. It just listened to our conversation and determined that these were things that needed to be done as part of the recap for these meetings. And this was a short meeting, so not much there in terms of what the summary and governance and tasks were. But we now use, and I'll get out of that. We now use this feature in all of our meetings, even meetings that we're in the conference room. We use Microsoft Teams Room feature so that it can record and transcribe our meetings and provide us that summary and recap. Because sometimes when you're in a meeting there for an hour and a half, you talk about a lot of things, and sometimes you don't write them all down, and it's kind of nice to go back and have it remind you that, hey, you committed to doing these certain things. And it's smart enough to pick out who said what, especially if the meeting is online. And very soon, the teams will be able to actually use voice and facial recognition, so that even if everybody is just in a conference room and nobody's logging in from elsewhere, it will be able to identify all the speakers in the room and be able to assign tasks and summarize things accordingly. So it's a really powerful feature. I know, Jeff, you've been using it a little bit. What do you think about it?
I think it's awesome. In the past, you'd always assign somebody to take minutes or record the minutes and then type up the minutes. We don't have to do that anymore. We just have to push a button at the beginning of the meeting, and we have a complete transcript and summary of the meeting. And as you pointed out, it pulls out certain tasks that were mentioned that needed to be done and starts a list for you. So it's awesome.
Yeah, and I like it. We use it for our company meeting in particular because, in our case, sometimes, or most times, there are people that miss that meeting because we're busy helping clients, so they have to do their work. So it's nice for them to be able to go back and not just have the recording of the meeting available to them, but actually the summary and what action items came out of it, so that if they don't have time to watch the entire hour-long video, they can at least get a sense of what happened during the meeting and what the highlights were. So it's very convenient for those sorts of things. And that's just one of the features of Copilot in Teams. And I know that Microsoft is continuing to enhance that feature. And it's going to get even more powerful and be basically what Microsoft envisions Copilot in Teams being, as kind of like another assistant, like a live assistant in Teams, so that if you're having a meeting, it's going to be able to not only do the transcription, summaries, and recaps, but also be able to give you some insights during the meeting and remind you of things during the meeting that you may have forgotten. So pretty powerful stuff coming from Microsoft.
Yeah, I think the AI will eventually be a participant in the meetings, not just a recording device or summary device, but yeah.
So I'm going to go into Word, and I'm going to take the last part of our meeting here to kind of demonstrate another capability that you have with Copilot in the Office suite. You can see that this is a traditional standard Office or Word interface, with the exception that you can see the Copilot icon up here and also here. So when you start working on this, it can ask you, what is it you want to do? And one of the things that you learned with Copilot, both the free version as well as the version that is part of the M365 suite, is that you need to know how to formulate prompts. And there's actually a great website that we'll point you to called Copilot Labs. That have some great training on how prompts work. Prompts really are a way for you to formulate, what question you are asking Copilot to do. And if it's confused, it'll ask you to amplify on it. But let me give you an example. So I'm going to say, hey, create an FAQ, pardon my typing, about personal time off based on this document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it, notice I hit this backslash, and it now is going to basically become a search engine. And I'm going to say, find the employee handbook. So it found the employee handbook that we have stored somewhere in SharePoint. I'm not sure where. I don't need to know. I just know that I can go find it anytime I want to. And so I'm going to say, go ahead and generate that FAQ. So we'll give it a few minutes here while it's working on that. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. You can use the Copilot features within pretty much all of the Office suite. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint. It's actually coming to SharePoint Access and any a whole bunch of different locations within the Microsoft ecosystem. So
I'm looking forward to the Outlook.
Yeah, I use the Outlook one to summarize conversations. So let's say you have a long email string going back and forth in your organization, and you just happen to be, one of the. Okay, so here we go. So one of the things about Copilot, and this, you will see this at the end when it stops generating this FAQ, it will say, hey, make sure that you edit this file because I may not have gotten it 100% right. They want you to understand that, Copilot is not infallible, and it's up to you as a human being that's using Copilot to decide whether you want to keep, edit, or just discard whatever it says. So you can see at the bottom it says, hey, do you want me to keep it? Do you want to regenerate it, delete it, or do you want to enhance it? So I can go in here and give it additional tasking. So say it to a table. Now, I haven't done that before, so I don't know what it's going to do. But so let's see what we get. Oh, there we go.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I hadn't seen that before.
First time I tried it, so we all are
like
learning.
I can live on the edge, don't you, Lewis?
So, fun little example of the power of Copilot and what it can do for your organization, and why I think it's going to be a real, a real big innovation in the Microsoft space. We are getting a lot of our clients asking for more information, and we're lining up some of those assessments. So if you are interested in one of those, feel free to reach out to either info@alvareztg.com or your business advisor if you're a client of ours, and we'll be happy to sit down and walk you through how that's going to work and what we can do for you. So we have a few minutes left, Jeff. Let's let's circle back to cybersecurity and Copilot. One of the things that we highly recommend that you do right away, and this is something that you don't need to to spend a lot of time putting together, because we can help you with that, is you need to develop a policy on the use of AI within your organization, and specifically how people can use not just Copilot for Microsoft 365, but any AI engine that's open to the public, because some organizations are finding that employees are taking proprietary documents that are part of the organization and using the public Copilot, for example, or ChatGPT to upload an Excel spreadsheet, for example, and say, hey, can you create some charts for me? And it can do that. It's great at charting. The problem is that now that information that you've uploaded to ChatGPT is in the public domain, and there's nothing to keep it from going to anybody else. So having an AI use policy that dictates specifically what employees can and can't do, not only is smart because it is a new technology and you want to be able to control it, but also it's good from a professional governance perspective, because since this is new, if an employee does do something that you later find is a violation of, or just in general something that they shouldn't have done, it's going to be hard for you to hold them accountable if there's no direction from leadership about the what you can and can't do. Yeah.
But the AI rules are. Yeah, definitely.
And
this has been a good meeting. I would just issue or have some final thoughts in that when we're talking about implementing Copilot in an organization, a lot of time we're thinking about the technical aspect of it, which is doing your data governance, getting your correct versions, licensed versions, getting the licenses themselves. But there's also what you'd mentioned about the user enablement. There should be an equal effort and a concurrent effort on user enablement to get the buy-in from all the managers in the organization, get the users get them training so that they can become effective and utilize that not too inexpensive license for Copilot. You want your users to fully implement it and use the features and use it effectively before so that your investment in AI doesn't go for naught. And that has happened in previous data projects or IT projects as they focus on the technical implementation. That goes well, but nobody ends up using it. So I think AI and Copilot specifically is going to not have that issue, because it is a game changer in the industry and in the world, if you want to say that.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll add to that is, Copilot for M365 is available not just for commercial users like us, but it's also available in the consumer product that Microsoft has out there. So a lot of consumers are actually getting Copilot to use at home and use in their own environment, not at work. But then when they come to work, if they don't have it available, they may not actually take work home with them and start using it, putting that information into their M365 environment. So you will lose control of that. That's why it's important that you understand and set the rules by which AI can be used in your organization, the do's and the don'ts. But also recognize that people will want your employees, especially those that are doing the knowledge worker stuff, the guys that do create job descriptions, that do spreadsheets, that do financial planning. They're going to want to use these tools. So it's an inevitable direction of pretty much every organization that this is going to be something that will be used at some level within all of our companies. So we might as well get as smart as we possibly can on it and implement it safely and securely.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, we have reached the bottom of the hour. Thank you so much for attending. We didn't get any questions today. That's okay. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer any of them. Either reach out to your business advisor, to me directly, or you can always email info@alvareztg.com. Have a great day and rest of the week, and we will talk to you next month. Take care, Jeff.
Thanks, Lois. Bye, everyone. Have a good week.